Okay, tonight is Alma chapter 62.
And now it came to pass that when Moroni had received this epistle, his heart did take courage, and was filled with exceeding great joy, because of the faithfulness of Pahoran, that he was not also a traitor to the freedom and cause of his country. But he did also mourn exceedingly because of the iniquity of those who had driven Pahoran from the judgment seat, yea, in fine, because of those who had rebelled against their country and also their God.
Now you see Moroni's reaction to receiving the letter back from Pahoran, which was in chapter 61. And as you can see, his reaction is kind of almost, it's a good news and bad news kind of a thing. Right? Yeah, the good news is he has an ally, the governor is not a traitor, he's not caught on the other side, so that was the good news. But now the bad news is everything that Pahoran laid out for him, right? All of the problems that he's gone through, and that there's people who have rebelled against the country and their God and taken over the city and so forth. So he wasn't happy to hear that. So yes, I'm happy you're still on my side, but I'm sorry that you've gone through what you've gone through, because I can see you have your own problems, which don't make me happy either.
And it came to pass that Moroni took a small number of men, according to the desire of Pahoran, and gave Lehi and Teancum command over the remainder of his army, and took his march towards the land of Gideon. And he did raise the standard of liberty in whatsoever place he did enter, and gained whatsoever force he could in all his march towards the land of Gideon. And it came to pass that thousands did flock unto his standard, and did take up their swords in the defense of their freedom, that they might not come into bondage.
Right, so you can see in verse 3, Moroni did exactly what Pahoran suggested. Right, so it took a small number of men, was traveling to the land of Gideon, left Lehi and Teancum in command of the army that was left behind, and so that this way they would get together. Right, so then as you can see in 4, it says that, like it says, they traveled, I guess they passed through other cities. It says they raised the standard of liberty in whatsoever place they entered. It was a torn piece of coat that they used like a flag, right? That they put a saying on there, and then but I guess in duplicating it, because actually they duplicated it, so I don't know if they always use torn coats. Maybe it was a little more nice looking, right, than the original one. But yeah, the original one was just on a torn piece of coat, and that they wrote the saying in memory of our God and our religion and our families and so forth. So I guess they're continuing to do this now. It says, as they do that, that's the rallying cry. That's our belief. That's what we're going to stand for. That's why we're willing to fight to defend all these things that are on the standard of liberty. So that's why in doing that, is you're basically looking for people that would fall in behind that people would support that particular cause. As you can see in 5, it says thousands did flock unto the standard, took up swords in defense of their freedom. They might not come into bondage. Okay, so it sounds like he's gathering up more people as he's going. Right, so on the way to the land of Gideon, he stops in other places, and who wants to be part of this? And look, this is what we're fighting for. Okay, we'll do it. And then they'll come with them. So by the time they're going to get to Gideon, it's going to be more than a few. Man, it says there's thousands. All right, so it's a pretty good saying, I guess. And so you got people to fall in and be part of this particular movement.
And thus, when Moroni had gathered together whatsoever men he could in all his march, he came to the land of Gideon, and uniting his forces with those of Pahoran, they became exceeding strong, even stronger than the men of Pachus, who was the king of those dissenters who had driven the free men out of the land of Zarahemla and had taken possession of the land. And it came to pass that Moroni and Pahoran went down with their armies into the land of Zarahemla, and went forth against the city, and did meet the men of Pachus, insomuch that they did come to battle. And behold, Pachus was slain, and his men were taken prisoners, and Pahoran was restored to his judgment seat.
They arrive at the land of Gideon with all the men they picked up along the way, so that they unite their forces, as with those of Pahoran, and so together it says that they have even a stronger army than the men of Pachus, right, who was the king of the kingmen, right? So he was the one they had appointed as the king. So now it's not spelled out too much, but you see 7 says they went to the land of Zarahemla, they had their battle, so Pachus is killed, the men are taken prisoners, and then they've taken back the city of Zarahemla, right? So again, not a lot of detail as to what was involved, but they just built a bigger army. The standard of liberty was a key in that happening, and so they went and took back what was theirs originally, the land of Zarahemla. The king of the kingmen is killed, and so now they're able to regain the city of Zarahemla.
And the men of Pachus received their trial according to the law, and also those kingmen who had been taken and cast into prison, and they were executed according to the law. Yea, those men of Pachus and those kingmen, whosoever would not take up arms in the defense of their country, but would fight against it, were put to death. And thus it became expedient that this law should be strictly observed for the safety of their country. Yea, and whosoever was found denying their freedom was speedily executed according to the law. And thus ended the 30th year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi, Moroni and Pahoran, having restored peace to the land of Zarahemla among their own people, having inflicted death upon all those who were not true to the cause of freedom.
They had a trial for those who were not killed, of course, and what was the penalty for those who were convicted? For the death, right? Okay. Yeah, you have people who are traitors to their own land here, right? To their own country, to their government, right? If you try to make them part of your army, they're traitors, so they're not really going to be with you. Because of their dissensions, Nephites were already killed, so I mean, in essence, they're responsible for that because if they'd all been together, that wouldn't have happened. So yeah, I think all of that together was what drove this. And really, there's a word even today called treason, right? That if you're, and so even in the United States, if you're guilty of treason, that can carry the death penalty, right? So I mean, that's down to today, right? If you're really working against your country, then the country doesn't put up with that, right? If you have to be for us, if you're going to be here, I mean, to try to do things that are harmful to the United States or the government of the United States is not taken lightly, right? So it was the same here, right? If you're working against our government and trying to overthrow our government and our people, well then we don't want you here. So that's what they did. But it sounds like they even did give them even then the option. It says, because toward the end of the 9 it says, whosoever would not take up arms in the defense of their country but would fight against it were put to death. So it almost sounds like, I don't know if they gave the option or just determined that these were not people who were going to defend it. But regardless, I guess maybe if any of them said, we're sorry, we see the light, we'll be with you now, maybe they would have given them a chance. I don't know. But it says, yeah, those who were not going to defend the country, you've proven you're a traitor, we're going to put you to death then. Right? And certainly that would be a deterrent from anybody else doing that, which is another thing that was considered. Right? That's why it says in 10, it became expedient, the law should be strictly observed for the safety of their country. Okay, because whoever was found denying their freedom was speedily executed according to the law. So that became a strict law, not just something to do if you felt like it, but they were going to really come down hard on people who were traitors to the country. So as a result, as the 30th year ends, you can see now that they restored peace to the land of Zarahemla. They've killed off those who were the threats to freedom, and now we have our city back, and we're able to now operate in the way that we really want to be operating.
And it came to pass in the commencement of the 31st year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi, Moroni immediately caused that provisions should be sent, and also an army of 6,000 men should be sent unto Helaman to assist him in preserving that part of the land. And he also caused that an army of 6,000 men with a sufficient quantity of food should be sent to the armies of Lehi and Teancum. And it came to pass that this was done to fortify the land against the Lamanites. And it came to pass that Moroni and Pahoran, leaving a large body of men in the land of Zarahemla, took their march with a large body of men towards the land of Nephihah, being determined to overthrow the Lamanites in that city.
All right, so now that this battle is over, and that they've taken back the land of Zarahemla, they're back where they're supposed to be, and they've killed off those who were the traitors. So now what's the next order of business? To do all the things that they were complaining about in the first place that were not being done, right? That was the whole condition that started this, so that they have Helaman and the others with their armies that are now a lot smaller. They've taken back all the cities of the Nephites and not able to even maintain them or protect them because their armies are too small, so they've been asking for reinforcements. So now we're going to send the reinforcements, as you can see in 12. It says 6,000 men sent to Helaman, and I think that the most they ever got was 2. So I mean, in 2000, so this was a big, a big influx of assistance here. 6,000 men plus the food. Another 6,000 goes to where Lehi and Teancum are. So I guess they had all the men there. They just had to be able to get them there and to find out what was needed and not have resistance to hold them back. And so now they sent them out, 6,000 here, 6,000 there, all the food that's needed. So they took care of all that. All right, and so once that was done, I said, all right, now let's look around and see what else do we have to do here. And so this is now they're going to say, well, the city of Nephi was our city, so we should go try to take that back now. So let's take some of the men we got left and go after that city next. All right, so yeah, I guess that they had all the help they needed. They just needed to be able to get the organization in place to be able to send them out. This maybe even included some of the ones they picked up along the way. Remember with the Standard of Liberty that we said as they traveled through some of the cities, they gained thousands of others, so that may have helped also to have other men to be able to send out.
And it came to pass that as they were marching towards the land, they took a large body of men of the Lamanites and slew many of them, and took their provisions and their weapons of war. And it came to pass, after they had taken them, they caused them to enter into a covenant that they would no more take up their weapons of war against the Nephites. And when they had entered into this covenant, they sent them to dwell with the people of Ammon, and they were in number about 4,000 who had not been slain.
All right, so on their way to the land of Nephi, it sounds like they encountered some other Lamanites that they were able to engage in battle. It says, you know, some were killed and some not. And so notice it says the ones who were killed, they took their food too, right? So they said, okay, now we got more food we can send out. All right, but once that was done and they had killed some of those, so some were left alive. Now, how did they deal with the ones that were not killed? And they sent them to dwell with the people of Ammon. Now, why would they send them there? Remember who the people of Ammon are, right? They're the ones who live in the land of Jershon, and they're the ones that had buried their weapons and said that they wouldn't fight anymore. So, right, that was the best fit, you know. So, right, they sent them to the people of Ammon because they weren't going to be fighting anymore either. So they were, again, Lamanites who had entered into a promise to not pick up weapons and fight against the Nephites. So they were able to go to the land of Ammon, where they would be protected by the Nephites in Zarahemla. Right, they protected them because they were not going to be fighting for themselves. Okay, so it's about 4,000 more that they sent over there. Right?
And it came to pass that when they had sent them away, they pursued their march towards the land of Nephi. And it came to pass that when they had come to the city of Nephi, they did pitch their tents in the plains of Nephi, which is near the city of Nephi. Now Moroni was desirous that the Lamanites should come out to battle against them upon the plains, but the Lamanites, knowing of their exceeding great courage, and beholding the greatness of their numbers, therefore they durst not come out against them, therefore they did not come to battle in that day.
All right, so now they've arrived in the land of Nephi, and as you can see, it says they wanted to draw the Lamanites out of the cities and out into the plains to battle. This sounds familiar, you know. I mean, this has happened a number of times that they want to draw them out of the city, right? But this is, the Lamanites were not willing to do that. They see you got a big army. We're not coming out of the city. Other times they faked them out with a small army and got them to come out thinking they were going to win, and then they found there were other people waiting and hiding or something to wipe them out. But in this case, the whole army is there, so I don't think we're coming out of this city, all right? Because we're safe in here, and we don't look too safe out there. So yeah, so no, we're not going to come out. So that's why it says there was no battle that day, all right? So in the daytime they didn't come out, and there was no battle fought.
And when the night came, Moroni went forth in the darkness of the night, and came upon the top of the wall to spy out in what part of the city the Lamanites did camp with their army. And it came to pass that they were on the east by the entrance, and they were all asleep. And now Moroni returned to his army, and caused that they should prepare in haste strong cords and ladders to be let down from the top of the wall into the inner part of the wall. And it came to pass that Moroni caused that his men should march forth and come upon the top of the wall, and let themselves down into that part of the city, yea, even on the west, where the Lamanites did not camp with their armies. And it came to pass that they were all let down into the city by night, by the means of their strong cords and their ladders. Thus when the morning came, they were all within the walls of the city.
The nighttime came, right, so they couldn't get them out of the city during the day. So during the night, they did what? Moroni went up on top of the wall of the city to look around and see where are other people, right? So they seem to be all on the east side of the city. So therefore, we're going to come down on the west side of the city, right? So they got strong cords and so forth and ladders, and they went over the wall of the city. You know, so you can just imagine them all coming in on the west side. So this way, they're not going to wake anybody up just yet until they're all in there. It says that Moroni caused his men should march forth from the top of the wall down on the west side of the city, right? And now they're all there. So when they're all let down into the city by night, then when the morning comes, they're all inside the city. Right, so they're not killing any sleeping people, but yet now they're all inside the city by the time the next morning comes. So now the Lamanites will have to come out of the city because now they're inside the city.
And now when the Lamanites awoke and saw that the armies of Moroni were within the walls, they were affrighted exceedingly, insomuch that they did flee out by the pass. And now when Moroni saw that they were fleeing before him, he did cause that his men should march forth against them, and slew many, and surrounded many others, and took them prisoners, and the remainder of them fled into the land of Moroni, which was in the borders by the seashore. Thus had Moroni and Pahoran obtained the possession of the city of Nephihah without the loss of one soul, and there were many of the Lamanites who were slain.
When the Lamanites woke up the next morning, what was their reaction? They were kind of afraid of what they saw, right? Here they thought they were safe inside their city, and the Nephite army's out there, and then so they go to sleep, and now the Nephite army's in here, right? So now they're inside the walls of the city. So you can see their reaction was we need to run now. Now we need to get out of the city because now they're in here. So it says they weren't trying to flee through the pass, but it says but the army of Moroni. What does it say? It says they marched forth against them, they slew many, they surrounded others, they took prisoners, right? So they did what they had to do here to take back the city. And so as you see 26, it says Moroni and Pahoran obtained the city of Nephihah without the loss of one soul, even though many of the Lamanites were killed. None of theirs were killed because they were in such good position inside the city to execute their strategy. So yeah, none of them were killed, but they were able to take back the city of Nephihah, which had been their goal here.
Now it came to pass that many of the Lamanites that were prisoners were desirous to join the people of Ammon and become a free people. And it came to pass that as many as were desirous, unto them it was granted according to their desires. Therefore all the prisoners of the Lamanites did join the people of Ammon, and did begin to labor exceedingly, tilling the ground, raising all manner of grain, and flocks and herds of every kind. And thus were the Nephites relieved from a great burden, yea, insomuch that they were relieved from all the prisoners of the Lamanites.
Part of any of these battles, you have a certain number of people who were slain and a certain number of people who were taken prisoners. All right, so as you can see, they had lots of Lamanite prisoners. Now, as you can see in 27, it says that many of them were desirous to join the people of Ammon and become a free people. The people of Ammon, or people referred to as the people of Ammon, were the Lamanites who were converted at one time, at the time of Ammon, and that they then vowed to not shed blood anymore because they were so convicted by their conversion that they buried their weapons and got their own city in the land of Jershon, near the city of Zarahemla, where the Nephites protected them. And so those were all Lamanite people living there. And if you remember just a few chapters ago, we had said that as the war was heating up, that those people, which would be, again, would be Lamanite people, but they were converted, were willing to throw in their lot with the army and basically break their oath to fight, but Helaman told them not to do that, but rather than they served up their 2,000 sons to be the fighters instead, who weren't covered by the original promise, and they became known as the 2,000 stripling warriors of Helaman, and later it was 2,060, if you remember, right? So these were all part of the people of Ammon. But yeah, the name of the people of Ammon just comes from back because Ammon was involved in their original conversion, and Ammon was a Nephite, but all these people, the people of Ammon, are all Ammonites. So as you can see here, it says that these were Lamanite people who were prisoners, so they were willing to join in with the people of Ammon, and of course, why not, right? Live in the dungeon or live as a free people, okay? That's not that hard of a choice, right? So they were willing to do that, but then I'm sure that meant following the rules of that particular town or city, and that they would not have weapons and they would not fight anymore. So based on those conditions, so this is Moroni and them were agreeable to them doing that. As you can see, it says as many as were desirous, to them was granted according to their desires, and so the prisoners then joined the people of Ammon and got places to raise flocks and herds and grain and so forth, right? And as you can see, it also there was a benefit to the Nephites, which you didn't have to worry about them as prisoners, right? Because every prisoner is somebody you got to feed, you got to watch them, right, that they don't escape. So yeah, I mean, if we could convert a prisoner into a free person, and they can just live and take care of themselves and grow their own crops and so forth, that's a win for the Nephites too. So they were happy to do that under those conditions. That's why they went ahead and did that. They agreed. Yeah, if you're willing to take the promise to not fight anymore, we'll set up for you. You can take care of yourself then, and we don't have to take care of you or watch you or have the burden of all these prisoners.
Now it came to pass that Moroni, after he had obtained possession of the city of Nephihah, having taken many prisoners, which did reduce the armies of the Lamanites exceedingly, and having regained many of the Nephites who had been taken prisoners, which did strengthen the army of Moroni exceedingly, therefore Moroni went forth from the land of Nephihah to the land of Lehi. And it came to pass that when the Lamanites saw that Moroni was coming against them, they were again frightened and fled before the army of Moroni. And it came to pass that Moroni and his army did pursue them from city to city until they were met by Lehi and Teancum, and the Lamanites fled from Lehi and Teancum, even down upon the borders by the seashore, until they came to the land of Moroni.
The city of Nephihah has been regained, as we already said, so now they set their sights on the next city, and so it says that they were, of course, happy that they had won this particular battle, because as you can see in verse 30, it was kind of a win-win for the Nephites. It says they reduced the armies of the Lamanites by a lot, because they killed some and took some prisoners and sent them off to the people of Ammon, and also they got their prisoners back, so their army was now bigger, so they went all the way around here, so now they were ready to go take back the rest of the lands. So they went on to the land of Lehi, which, as you can see, there really was no fight at all involved there. It says that the Lamanites were frightened, and they took off, and they went on to the land of Moroni, which was next, right? So you can see it says that Moroni and his army pursued them from city to city, okay, until they were met by Lehi and Teancum, and then the Lamanites fled from them. So yeah, their group is getting smaller, and the Nephites are pretty large, so now they're kind of just chasing them around, taking back their cities. Okay, so in fact, as I recall, the land of Moroni is going to be kind of the last one here, so they're going to converge on that land as they finish taking back their cities.
And the armies of the Lamanites were all gathered together, insomuch that they were all in one body in the land of Moroni. Now Ammoron, the king of the Lamanites, was also with them. And it came to pass that Moroni and Lehi and Teancum did encamp with their armies round about in the borders of the land of Moroni, insomuch that the Lamanites were encircled about in the borders by the wilderness on the south, and in the borders by the wilderness on the east. And thus they did encamp for the night. For behold, the Nephites and the Lamanites also were weary because of the greatness of the march. Therefore they did not resolve upon any stratagem in the night time, save it were Teancum, for he was exceedingly angry with Ammoron, insomuch that he considered that Ammoron and Amalekiah his brother had been the cause of this great and lasting war between them and the Lamanites, which had been the cause of so much war and bloodshed, yea, and so much famine.
The armies of the Lamanites were all gathered together, such that they were now all in one body in the land of Moroni, right? Because they had probably some in different cities, but as they got chased out of those cities, they headed for the land of Moroni. That was the last place they had. So by the time they were there, now everybody was together, because this was the last city that they still had possession of. Right? So it says even the Lamanite king was with them, who was named Ammoron. Right? And so as they reached the city of Moroni now, excuse me, it says that they encircled the city, and now we're figuring out what to do next here. Right? And so it says they retired from their march, so they kind of camped out for the night. And it says here that the Nephites and Lamanites were all weary because of the greatness of the march, how long they went. So therefore they all decided to rest for the night. See, because we've heard other times where one or the other took advantage of the nighttime to do something else. In fact, we just read earlier in this chapter where when they got to the city of Nephihah, while the Lamanites were sleeping in the city, the Nephites used the nighttime to climb over the wall and be inside the city when they woke up in the morning. So they were using strategy in the nighttime. And other times, and other chapters too, that one or the other was doing something at night while the other were sleeping. But here it says, everybody was tired, so everybody's going to just take the night off and sleep here, right? See, it says no strategy, right? So they did not resolve any strategy in the nighttime, except for one person, right? So just Teancum, right, who was one of the army leaders there. It says that he was very angry with Ammoron, who was the brother of Amalekiah, as you recall. And so, as you can see here, it says he basically blamed them for this whole thing, right? So, and rightly so, right? That Amalekiah was the original instigator of the problems between the Nephites and Lamanites, and then he was eventually killed, and Ammoron, his brother, took over and continued with that particular cause. So yeah, so he kind of blamed them. So he wasn't going to take the night off. Right? He was going to figure out something to do to strike back at this particular king.
And it came to pass that Teancum in his anger did go forth into the camp of the Lamanites, and did let himself down over the walls of the city. And he went forth with a cord from place to place, insomuch that he did find the king, and he did cast a javelin at him, which did pierce him near the heart. But behold, the king did awake his servant before he died, insomuch that they did pursue Teancum and slew him. Now it came to pass that when Lehi and Moroni knew that Teancum was dead, they were exceeding sorrowful. For behold, he had been a man who had fought valiantly for his country, yea, a true friend to liberty, and he had suffered very many exceedingly sore afflictions. But behold, he was dead, and had gone the way of all the earth.
And Teancum was one of the leaders of the army there, and so he kind of went out on his own and says got into the city, climbed over the wall into the city, and went looking for the king. He only had one sight in mind. He wasn't looking to take over the whole city. He was just after one person, and so he went and found him. So he went and found the king, just cast a javelin at him and killed him. Right, but as you can see, the king before he died managed to alert others there, and so then they were able to kill Teancum, which was a sad thing for the Nephites. So this was one of their main players here. So he was killed in this particular skirmish, but yet he was successful in killing the king before that happened. Right, as you can see in 37, it says, of course, when they heard that he was dead, they were very, very sad about this. And so you see a little brief thing about this. The man who fought valiantly for his country, stood up for the freedom of the people and so forth. So they were sorry to lose him, right? But yet this is what happened, and so he gave his life for the cause. And but he was successful in killing the king, which would certainly have ramifications among the Lamanites having had that happen to them. It wasn't they died for nothing, but still, of course, they were sad that it happened.
Now it came to pass that Moroni marched forth on the morrow, and came upon the Lamanites, insomuch that they did slay them with a great slaughter, and they did drive them out of the land, and they did flee, even that they did not return at that time against the Nephites. And thus ended the 31st year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi, and thus they had had wars and bloodsheds and famine and affliction for the space of many years. And there had been murders and contentions and dissensions and all manner of iniquity among the people of Nephi. Nevertheless, for the righteous sake, yea, because of the prayers of the righteous, they were spared.
The next morning, they went in and fought within the city. So apparently they saw out the night as everybody was taking the night off, and so now on the morrow it says they came upon Lamanites and slayed them with a great slaughter. Okay, and you can probably picture why that would have happened because of what we just said. Right here, they wake up and find that their king has been killed in the night, and so now they're in disarray. And plus their army was smaller anyway, and the Nephites had a great army, so they really didn't stand a chance here. That's why it says that they slayed them with a great slaughter, drove them out of the land, and says they did flee and did not return at that time against Nephi. So they went back where they came from, right back to the land of Nephi, basically, which is where they're from. And so this is what and they were able now, the Nephites, to regain that last city of Moroni. So they completed their quest to get all their cities back. So then they drove the Lamanites out once and for all, at least in this period of time, right? And so that's how the 31st year of the judges ends, right? With them getting back their lands this way and driving out the Lamanites. And you can see just a summary here of what had happened. It says that over these last few years they had wars, bloodsheds, famine, and so forth, murders, dissensions, all that. All right, so that they had all these particular issues that they dealt with, but that they were delivered because of the righteous sake. And because of the prayers of the righteous, they were spared, right? So again, this is, even though it reads like a war novel at times, all right, but yet, there's always mention of invoking God in this, right? That they look for the prayers of the righteous in this case. They look for God's direction. They look for God's protection. They look to be doing what was right in the sight of God. So that's why, written from this perspective, it's a godly narrative of people just trying to defend themselves, as we've said other times. That they would have been happy to not have any battles at all with Nephites, but the Lamanites kept coming against them, so they had to defend themselves, or in this case, try to get their cities back that they had already owned before. So this was what they were generally having to fight about. So they weren't bloodthirsty people; they were just doing what they had to do here. But they were looking for God's direction in that and His protection.
But behold, because of the exceeding great length of the war between the Nephites and the Lamanites, many had become hardened because of the exceeding great length of the war. And many were softened because of their afflictions, insomuch that they did humble themselves before God, even in the depth of humility. And it came to pass that after Moroni had fortified those parts of the land which were most exposed to the Lamanites until they were sufficiently strong, he returned to the city of Zarahemla, and also Helaman returned to the place of his inheritance, and there was once more peace established among the people of Nephi. And Moroni yielded up the command of his armies into the hands of his son, whose name was Moroni-ha, and he retired to his own house, that he might spend the remainder of his days in peace.
41, you have again the little summary of what's happened during the times of war. And I remember this verse being spiked out one time, something I was reading, because it's in the same verse, it's referring to the same war. It says that there were many people who had become hardened and others who were softened, right? So the same war affected different people different ways, right? As you can see, it says that many had become hardened because of the exceeding great length of the war, but others were softened because of their afflictions, such that they became more humble and so forth. And so it was like not that it has a whole lot to do with this particular story, but it was a whole narrative written of how, again, sometimes the same thing or the same event can affect different people different ways, right? And that's what happened here. It says that some of the people became hardened because of the war, but others because of what they had to bear in their afflictions, they were softened and then were more humble after that. So this was the effect on some of the people. All right, and so now 42 and 43 is, so it does sound like it's like the end of the war here, right? It's the end of this particular chapter in the history of the Nephite people, because as you can see, this is Moroni, who's been the kind of the chief general for the Nephites for many chapters here, right? He's retiring basically. As you can see, it says that after he was done, he returned to the city of Zarahemla, right? And he says, okay, that's it. I'm going to retire from being in charge of the army. I'm turning over the business to my son, whose name is Moroni-ha. He's retiring to his house I'm going to enjoy the peace the rest of my life now. I've done this job long enough. And it says, Helman returned to the place of his inheritance, right? So everybody's kind of going back home and kind of resuming their life, as it would have been or should have been had there not been a war going on. So Moroni retiring, Helman's going to go back to what he was doing before.
And Pahoran did return to his judgment seat, and Helman did take upon him again to preach unto the people the word of God. For because of so many wars and contentions, it had become expedient that a regulation should be made again in the church. Therefore Helman and his brethren went forth, and did declare the word of God with much power unto the convincing of many people of their wickedness, which did cause them to repent of their sins, and to be baptized unto the Lord their God. And it came to pass that they did establish again the church of God throughout all the land. Yea, and regulations were made concerning the law, and their judges and their chief judges were chosen.
As you can see, it says that Pahoran returned to the judgment seat, right? And Pahoran, of course, was the chief judge already occupying the judgment seat, but during this particular skirmish, and remember the last couple chapters, he exchanged letters with Moroni, where he was driven out of the city, and Alma had to take it over the city of Zarahemla. So now they had the city back, and actually at first Pahoran and Moroni had gone together and led armies to take the city back. So all that's over now, so Pahoran is ready to return to the judgment seat. All right, and now Helman says that to take upon him again to preach unto the people the word of God. Right? You may almost have forgotten, because it's been quite a while, but Helman was actually supposed to just be the leader of the church, right? Because Helman was the son of Alma, right? And Alma had been in charge of the church. And then when he was gone, then Helman took over. So Helman was in charge of the church before, so now he's going to pick that up again, right? Like I said, last chapter, we remember him as leading the 2,000 warriors, right? That was his job there, but his original job was to be in charge of the church. So now he says he's going to go back to that, to preach unto the people the word of God, right? Because now it says they needed it, right? And so probably all that was kind of put on hold while this was going on, so that now the people need to hear about God again and to have the preaching done, right? So telling the brethren to declare the word of God, and many were baptized, right? And so they basically got the church going again. So yeah, it leads me to believe it was kind of in disarray for a while this was all going on. And of course, not too surprising, because if your city's being taken over by somebody else all the time, and then you got to go to take it back, and so yeah, who can be in one place long enough to even worry about going to church or having a church? So their homes were being taken away, and so here now they got everything back, they got all their homes back, so now they can get back to the business of serving God. And so that's why it says that Helman and the others were preaching the word and baptizing, and the government was getting back in the way it should have been. So things are returning to normal, the way that they were supposed to be originally before all this upheaval occurred.
And the people of Nephi began to prosper again in the land, and began to multiply and to wax exceeding strong again in the land, and they began to grow exceeding rich. But notwithstanding their riches, or their strength, or their prosperity, they were not lifted up in the pride of their eyes. Neither were they slow to remember the Lord their God, but they did humble themselves exceedingly before him.
When I start to read in verse 48, it says the people of Nephi began to prosper in the land and were to wax exceeding strong and began to grow exceedingly rich. Right? Usually, that's followed by they're lifted up in pride and they're full of themselves and they begin to forget God and so then they go off in the wrong direction. That's usually what happens, right, in the Book of Mormon. But this is an exception to that. As you can see, it says in 49, it says, notwithstanding their riches and all that, they were not lifted up in the pride of their eyes. Neither were they slow to remember the Lord their God. And they humbled themselves before him. All right, so they really had the best of both worlds now. Here they had won the war. They had regained their homes and their cities. The church was being reestablished. They were now becoming prosperous, naturally speaking, but still remembering God and still being humble before him. Right, so they had the best of both worlds now. That they were able to serve God and have things as well. So that's nice when you can kind of have it all that way.
Yea, they did remember how great things the Lord had done for them, that he had delivered them from death, and from bonds, and from prisons, and from all manner of afflictions, and he had delivered them out of the hands of their enemies. And they did pray unto the Lord their God continually, insomuch that the Lord did bless them according to his word, so that they did wax strong and prosper in the land. And it came to pass that all these things were done, and Helaman died in the 35th year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi.
They remember the things that the Lord had done for them, right? That's why it says they delivered them from death and bonds and prison and afflictions and so forth on the hand of their enemies. So therefore they were remembering God. It says they were praying a lot, and as a result, God blessed them. That they were doing well physically and spiritually. So that was good for them, all right? They were in a good relationship with God, in a good place with God. And so, apparently Helaman and his brothers had done a nice job in preaching to them and teaching them and sharing the things of God, because they were now in this good place. And so, as it says in 52, now Helaman died in the 35th year, all right? So his job is done, right? At this point, he did what he had to do, carrying on for his father Alma, and now he's passed away, and so now we'll move on to somebody else.